Good morning. Good summer. Although it's really hard to figure out. And sometimes the weather's a little bit like God. It's kind of hard to figure out, isn't it? And certainly we have an expectation. I'm from around Laughlin area, so I have an expectation of about 118. So this is really weird. But great. I mean, we still getting snow in the mountains. It's just an amazing thing. Okay, it's summertime. Hey, I don't know what that means. Yeah, when I was a kid, I thought it was really cool. And then I got a job. And summer, it really didn't change things. It's just hot, Darwin. It was just hot out there. Especially out there in Arizona, it was really hot and dirty and hot. When I was a kid, all I could think about was swimming all summer. You know, that's what I did, as I just couldn't wait. All right, I could see my friends, you know. And but there are some people that are actually getting summers, children, unless they're in summer school, and young adults and college age, and summer's a great time. It still is a great time, and I encourage you to get involved in something this summer. If you're not out sweating in the oil patch or somewhere else, and you have time, please plug your way into something. Do something different that you haven't done before. Try that. See what God does with that. So I want to encourage you to get involved. We are starting a series, and I don't think it's a novel idea, but I think it's a really good idea. Basically, what we're going to do for the summer is we're going to go through one of the Gospels with the others helping us. But basically, we're going to look at what it means to meet Jesus. Again, for the first time. Why would we want to spend the summer looking at Jesus? Well, some really good reasons. One, he's probably the most interesting person that ever lived. Number two, he's had more love songs written about him than any other person that ever existed. Number three, he's had more paintings painted about him than anybody's ever painted. Number four, he's had more cathedrals and buildings and stuff and universities and all kinds of things dedicated to him. And he's the founder of this thing that we're in. He's the founder, he's the cornerstone of all this, of the whole thing. And there's a lot of people involved in this. 2 billion plus. Largest faith in the world. Pretty good amount. And so Jesus is very interesting. Very interesting. And you know, there's a lot of people, actually millions of them, that have said this: I've met him, I've followed him, I've discovered him, and I found him to be exactly who he said he was. And with those that kind of stuff out there, I would say it would be a pretty good thing for us to attempt to find him, to follow him again. And if you've been in church long enough, you need that. We need that. We need the fresh wind stuff. We need Jesus again. And if you're talking about the Holy Spirit or Jesus or God, Christians understand you're saying the same thing. You're different persons, different words, different functions, same person. Sometimes I'm a dad, sometimes I'm a husband, sometimes I'm a son. I'm different things for different people. I got to figure out which hat I have on. So I think he's very interesting. And you know, a lot of people are really confident about who Jesus is. It's amazing. I mean, when you read the scriptures or you read the Bible, it's an amazing how confident people appear to have heard from God and to know Jesus. But I don't want to assume anything. I was in a senior Bible study. That's very seasoned people and me. We were together, as I do a lot of weeks. And there was one lady, her name was Bonnie. Bonnie has passed from this life. But Bonnie asked us a question. She said, how does God talk? Because I keep hearing the people here say, the Lord told me so. And she was not a church person for 50 years. And we kept trying to say these things like, well, he worked through circumstances, and he works through the Bible, and he worked, we came up with all these answers, and she was still looking at us kind of like my little chihuahua does. She kind of turns her head when she's trying to figure out what you're doing. She was still looking at us. And then finally she said, no, does he talk? We said, well, he impresses us in our heart very clearly. But he doesn't come up and talk. Because he talked a lot already. So a lot of us struggle to figure that out. But if I was to try and introduce you, trying to introduce people to Jesus is a little bit like trying to introduce you to my friend Steve. I have a friend that's named Steve Doyle. Some of you know him. He's a chaplain in the Army. He was here for several years. We're sitting in this building primarily because of Steve Doyle, not me. And he's an interesting guy. And so I would try and describe him to you. Well, he's a little ADD. He's pretty excitable. He will say the darndest things at the darndest times. He's real energetic. He's real sensitive. He's crazy. He'll jump from a tall building and yawn, And I'll try and describe my friend to you. But until you've met him and dealt with him personally, you'll struggle. You'll kind of go, yeah, I kind of know about him. That's why we go to people who actually knew Jesus. I have total confidence in the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I've heard all the critical scholarship. I've heard it, read it, been there and done that multiple times. And I have total confidence. The Gospels are not really history. And every time we try and do history with them, it's frustrating. The Gospels aren't really literature, like Shakespeare, and we have trouble with that. The Gospels are primarily witnessing accounts. They're going to tell you about Jesus. They really want you to know him. They really do. They were written between 60 and 80 A.D., the latest being John, but probably the earliest, in my mind, most definitely the earliest is the Gospel of Mark. Mark is, I believe, and most scholars believe, some don't, but I believe, and the early scholars believe, that Mark is Peter's gospel. Because Peter was a fisherman and did not know how to write. He counted fish on his toes, you know what I mean? He was just a fisherman. And so he had to have writers. A lot of people had writers, people that wrote stuff for them. Very low literacy rate, less than a percentile. That's a few people that can write. So I was thinking about this, and I thought, here's a good, I give you a quote here this morning. This is from Papias, that quote, if you could throw that up. All right, here we go. This is Papias, Bishop of Hierapolis. He lived from 60 to 130 A.D. He said this, who said that Mark had been the secretary and translator for Peter. 60 A.D., the apostles are still alive, quite a few of them. And it says he wrote accurately all that he remembered. So, let me tell you another reason it's good to spend some time figuring out who the real Jesus is that there's a lot of other Jesuses out there. There are. Some people, Jesus is a really slick CEO, business guy. For other people, he is a roving psychotherapist, ready to do therapy with you. For some people, he's just a spiritual guru. For a guy named Dan Brown, he's the boyfriend of Mary Magdalene. So who's the real Jesus? That's just this year's books, guys. Next year, who knows who Jesus will be? And it's an interesting thing what happens with Jesus too, is that a lot of times the people that are presenting him, pretty soon he begins to resemble them. You know, have you noticed that? If I'm just kind of a middle class guy that's nice, pretty soon, after a while, Jesus is just a middle class guy that's pretty nice. Have you noticed that? Or he could be like this guy I met this week out by the Kern River. I go out there and jog along the river because we've got water in it, and it's great. And I met a guy there, and he's on the street, Luke, and the guy on the street there. And anyway, that was with my cell phone. The Droid is okay pick, but anyway, it's got a, I don't know what's got the line, but I don't know why we have. I guess our weather is a little better. We seem to have more homeless people. Have you guys noticed that? Do you see that? Those of us that have been there, well, we see a difference. I live over in Quellwood, and I see a lot of traffic of guys. I used to know the homeless guys in the neighborhood. I could tell you that's, you know. But now there's some new guys. And so I was just talking to him for a while. He had a cute little dog, huge cart with huge amounts of stuff on it. For some, Jesus is a guy with dreadlocks and tattoos. It's just interesting like that. Maybe it's because we just want him so bad. And we'd like to know him, so he kind of becomes like us. And one of the great things about the scriptures is that we get to see an accurate picture. We get to know that, in fact, he was a first-century Jew. He was a peasant. He gathered some disciples, spent about 3 years with them, taught them things, seemed to have great compassion for all people, and then we killed him. And then his followers, lo and behold, said, he has risen from the dead, and begin to proclaim that. And then most of them were killed for that very thing. That's pretty accurate. This is not really a truth time, but that's pretty accurate when someone will pay for something with their life. That's what we have. That's the bare facts on the ground. So, does this sound like a good journey to you guys for the summer? We are spending the summer in the Gospel of Mark trying to find Jesus again. And let me tell you this. He'll be in the strangest spots. I'm not sure I didn't spot him last night we had some music recitals here in this building, and I'm not sure I didn't spot him there. It's interesting like that. So, we are in Mark chapter 1, looking at verses 1 through 8. Mark chapter 1. If you want to take notes, there are, again, a spot in there, and I believe I'm accurate this time. And so, we are in Mark chapter 1. Mark is really interesting because he doesn't give you any background on Jesus, like he doesn't tell birth stories and all of that stuff. He kind of just explodes with Jesus right out of the bag. Mark is, he's the gospel writer that just gives you the facts. Do you have people like that in your life? Do you know how some people give you more than the facts, and by the time they're done talking, you go, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. But some people just give you the darn, like that, you know. Kind of like guys, like a mechanic. You really want the facts, don't you? Your car is dead. You're in trouble. This is $3,000, you know, that kind of stuff. Just, you want the facts about stuff. Peter is a fact guy. When he thinks something, he says it, but he's short and sweet. One of the things we know about Peter's gospel, Mark, is that there's a word that's in there 52 times. You know what the word is? It's euthys in Greek. But you know what the word is? Immediately. Jesus did this, and then he went immediately over here. Jesus did this, and immediately he was over here. It's fast. It's like God on the run. It's God movement. That's really how Peter sees Jesus. It's Jesus just blazing this trail through this little podunk country. It's very interesting. And so, and I would recommend that if you want to know some more about some of that, and if you think about Jerusalem and where Jesus walked, who has gone to the Holy Land? Any Holy Land persons? Okay, none of us, including me. Basically, it's kind of like Barstow. You guys been to Barstow? It is dry and dusty and hot. Check the temp. Go on Google, check the temp. It's hot. It's really dusty. It's lots of rocks. It's been deforested so many times, it's really rocky. And there's a few nice places up by Galilee. There's some mountains you can even ski on, but it's pretty dry, hot. And you think about Jesus walking around in that dusty place and doing what he did. So, back to the Gospel of Mark. And there shall, for those of us that need places to hang our hats, there shall be 3 points today. First point is, who is he? Second point is, how can you meet him? And third point, where in the world is he going? Where's he going? Those are the points for the day. Real Jesus. And Peter taking us on this journey, really wanting us to know about Jesus. You know, Peter only has 2 points in his book, the whole gospel. Who Jesus was and what he did. That's it. So, okay. And Peter is primarily interested in us being totally changed by knowing Jesus, just like he was. So, the first point is who he is. Well, Peter, writing through Mark, quotes Isaiah, and you heard that earlier, even sung that earlier. And he was talking about a messenger coming. And primarily, who Peter says Jesus is, who Mark says he is king. We're not very kingy here, are we? We kind of got mad at king stuff a couple hundred years ago and started our own joint. But we have a president, don't we, here in America? We have a president. Now, let me tell you this. Where's the king left? There's one over there in England, right? Okay, let me tell you this. The president of the United States has a lot more power than the king of England. I mean, we created a king, we kind of de-kinged him, but we have a president. Checks and balances, the whole thing. It's cooperative, democracy, all that. It's not a political thing. I'm just saying we're not used to kings. Kings are a little, we're not sure how we feel about them. I think of kings, I think of the military. I think of generals. When I was a lowly peon in the military, they call them privates, and there's just hundreds of thousands of us, occasionally a general would come around. And it was a really huge thing. Matter of fact, sometimes they'd come to inspect us. They'd call it the IG, the inspecting general. And private, you better be so cleaned up, and so they call it squared away. You should be totally squared away. And if he comes to talk to you, you better know the answer to everything. That's the military. And so we would watch for it, and there would be a car, and you could tell if it was a general, because in the military they put little red flags on the front of the car, and it has a star. General. And everybody gets nervous. Everybody's, oh. But who do we get nervous for? Peter says a king came here. What does Peter mean when he says king? What does Mark mean? You know what he means, right? He means King Jesus. He actually means God-man. He actually means God in the flesh. The Holy One of Israel. In a person. I ask kids sometimes, I like to ask them this, because it helps me and helps them, hopefully, is that I ask, where's God at? And you know what kids say, right? You know what your kids, most of them say? He's in heaven. And then I say, what's heaven like? It's perfect. Wherever God is, it's perfect. Wow. Sounds like a cool place. For Israel, it was the same thing. God was in heaven. But now, Mark is telling us God is here. That's what Peter's saying. He starts off saying that. He doesn't wait. The king has come. You need to know that. So, anointed one, the messenger, preparing a way for the Lord. Saying God has come is kind of says it all. There's not really much to say after that. For a lot of us, we hear a lot of religious talk and different things. But for Christians, we say that God is in Jesus. That's how we know God. We don't know him because we think God is in us and that God is everywhere. That would be Eastern. And we don't say that God is just way over there. That would be Islam. That would be Judaism. Christians say, God came here. Then. In that guy. Yeah. That's it. Big deal. King thing. Jesus didn't write a single word. Didn't lead an army. Historians ignore him. Josephus is the only one that mentions him. But he changed history more than anyone. He's changed everything. Jesus. I don't know about you, and I know we're just getting started in this, but sometimes I feel close to Jesus, and then sometimes I feel like he pushes me away. Do you? Jesus is very relational. It's very odd. It's like a person. Do you guys have that in your relationship? Sometimes you feel close to someone, and the next day you get up and you look at her or you look at him and you go, that is a stranger. I don't know them. I don't know why I'm here with them. I don't know what they want from me. Come on. That's personal relationships. I don't know whose kids those are. Don't know them. It seems to be in the Gospels when Jesus is with his disciples that he does that sometimes. He pushes them off. And there's good reason for the distance. There is. So, Jesus, how do we get to know him? Well, let me say some things, and this might be worth writing down about following Christ. Here's what God does, I believe for us, at the core of us, is that knowing Jesus, getting to know Jesus, getting to know God through Jesus, it changes the drive of your heart. I have a friend, a local businessman that has been through millions, and he said, here's what goes on for him each morning. He gets up in the morning, and he said it's like the cheetah and the gazelle. The cheetah wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to have to run fast enough to catch my dinner. And my dinner is a gazelle every time. And the gazelle gets up every morning and says, I'm going to have to run fast enough to not get caught by that cheetah, or I'm his dinner. Both fearful ways to live, but oftentimes how we feel about life. If God were to change that for you, if Jesus changed that for you, and the drive of your life became something else besides fear, and it would be the heart of God himself in Jesus. The drive of your life is that, to serve him, to love him, to know him. So God wants to change the drive of our life. That's one of the wonderful things about God and Jesus. Another thing about the Christian God is this, is that Jesus in the flesh also gives us a reason for suffering. I don't think there's any faith that I can see, please talk to me if you see one, where a person like him came and was treated like he was treated. Wounds, rejection, ultimate rejection. There's something that attracts us to Jesus and something that scares us to death about him. But suffering, I have found that Jesus is very close in suffering. Very close when we come to peace and justice issues. Very close when we come to caring for others in our community. Very close in those difficult situations as Jesus encountered constantly. Always healing, always feeding, always caring, always doing what needed to be done. Always turning the earth into heaven wherever he was. What a wonderful thing. So, changing the drive of our heart, a new understanding when we are suffering, that's what Jesus does. And so those are a couple things that we can get a handle on about Jesus and let him do what he needs to do. The second point is, how do you meet Jesus? The second point, according to John, or according to Mark, is that, and John the Baptist, who's in this section, is that you meet Jesus in the wilderness. I don't know what you think about when you think about wilderness, but I want to tell you what the Bible means about wilderness. Wilderness for some of us is like Survivor Man in the forest with stuff to catch and eat and deer and all this stuff, and you just have to figure out how to do it. Wilderness in the Bible is primarily about deserts where there is no food. I mean, there's not even any lizards. There's nothing. There's no water. There's no food. Life is unsustainable. Just can't live out there. So, there are thorns, there's thirst, there's loneliness, there's all the things. All of us would confess that we have times of wilderness in our lives. Times of loneliness, times of not feeling like we're able to eat spiritually, able to drink, able to do the things, just periods of time when we don't seem to be able to find what we need. And God seems to meet his people in the wilderness. He seems to like that. He does. He meets the Israelites out there. What happened when God was bringing the Israelites out of Egypt? They went where? Out into the desert. They're actually in the desert south of Israel. Not a friendly place. How did they get water? They had to ask God. Moses asked God, struck a rock. God, these people are thirsty. They're going to kill me. Where's some water? And God would show them water. And then everyone would get hungry, which is normal. God, these people are hungry. They're going to kill me. That's Moses' line every time. And here's some food. And so they had food and water, and God provided. But I think we say that you meet God in the wilderness when you discover, are you ready? Your well runs dry. What is a well? A well is a hole. Anybody drink out of a well ever? Okay. Any Okies that have drank out of a well? Any Arkies? Texans? Okay. I have relatives in Oklahoma that I don't know anymore. But last time I went back there, I was very small, and they had wells and outhouses and biscuits for breakfast. That's it. That's all we did. And shoot guns at each other and chase chickens. Not sure that really happened. No, it really happened. But anyway, wells. Wells. Everybody has wells in your life. You have a well. You have something that you put all your hope into, all your dreams, all your security, all your well-being, all your significance in life. There is something that grows into your life and becomes a well for you. And God says, I'm the only well that never, ever runs dry. Every other area of life does. And those of us that have lived a while just know it. We just know it. After achievements and degrees and all kinds of stuff and financial success and community success, and I've got this power position, and I'm relationally, and all these things that turn into wells for us, every one of them runs dry. And God says, I want me to be the center of you, because I never, ever run dry. I always have food. I always have water. So, we meet God in the wilderness. Sometimes we have to have those wells, those things that run dry. When I was younger, in my 20s, accomplishment was very important. Degrees, success, accolades, good. Just not the main thing. Just not near as exciting as following Jesus, actually, I have to say. Just not near as interesting. Just not near as frustrating. Just definitely not near as exciting. I stand before you today as a satisfied follower. I'm fine. Been doing this about 30 years. Following Jesus. My life, I had no idea where it was going. Absolutely no idea. And neither do disciples, and neither do you if you're following Jesus. I'm not talking about, do you have the same job? I'm just talking about, in general, following Jesus takes you to surprising places. Every time. Surprising places relationally. Surprising places compassionately. Surprising places all over the place. Even in Kern County. Even in Bakersfield. So, all of us have a sneaking suspicion that everything that we put all our stuff into somehow can't really serve as the center of who we are and our meaning. There has to be something beyond all of this stuff. So, and most people spend a lot of time trying to do that, to experience something way beyond themselves. Primarily, our culture uses sex, drugs and alcohol, and achievement, new experiences, to get a feeling of living. That's what it is. Living big, living large. That's it. That's what we do. Just screw it down a little bit, watch TV, see how you are. That's us. And yet, following Jesus is even better than all that. Really is. Quite amazing. So, there are good things that we make ultimate things, and that's the very error that we have. So what do we do? Now, it's interesting what happened with Jesus in this passage, that Jesus came and he baptized. And baptism is a interesting thing. We're having baptisms this month, the third week of this month. Some people are being baptized. Baptism is interesting. It's interesting because it developed from washing before people went into temple. Washing. There's a few stories. There's a Syrian general that got baptized himself, actually. But what happened when Jesus came is that Jesus insisted that someone else needed to baptize you. You're not doing this washing yourself. You're letting someone else. It is about someone else doing what you need done. I can still remember just knowing that my life would never be the same, and telling my minister, this was on the east side of Bakersfield, over on the east side, and I told him, I said, Pastor Quinn, you must baptize me. My life is, I don't know, I don't think this will ever stop. I think I am totally gripped by this life of faith, following Christ. And so he baptized me. We all need to be baptized by another because it's God's salvation. It is another. But sometimes many of us, and over the last 2 years, we have seen our culture went through a terrible, terrific time. We've talked about that over and over again. Job loss, marital struggles, breakups, all kinds of things. But it's in that very clearing time that we get driven back to God. We get put back to that place where we have, what does Eugene Peterson say in the Message? He says, you've got all you need when he's all you got. I love that. Oh yeah, when everything's taken away and you just got God and you just have God to cling to, and all you can do is just pray and say, God, I don't know how to get through this. Look at my situation. No one's had one like this. Look at this. God, help me. When we start doing that, we are driven to the well that is God. When everything's smooth sailing, there's no need. But when we are in need, he seems to clear it out for us. I mean, there are those desert times when we can't relate to others, we're struggling, we're grouchy, we're confused, financial troubles, dark thoughts about ourselves, and all this kind of stuff. And we start looking for a Savior. We looked around at people for a while. Wonder if she could help me. Wonder if he might be the one. We're really looking for someone else. We're looking for the King. Because he's got all the resources. He's got what we need. Now, you can be, this is Bakersfield's kind of the belt buckle, Bible belt a little bit here. We've got a lot of Bible belt stuff here. Right? You guys notice that? Anybody notice that? Okay. A lot of stuff. A lot of religious stuff. You can believe all of that. You can believe Apostles' Creed, everything. But until you are driven to the well, it doesn't make sense. It's veneers. It's nice teeth. Until the heart of you is, until Jesus overthrows you. That's what he does. Did you know that's what you're here for today? I tricked you, didn't I? King Jesus is here to overthrow your life and to change it completely. He is the great life interrupted. Ask the Apostle Paul. He lived the interrupted life. He said, oh, God, I have to serve Jesus the rest of my days. And the Apostle Paul, who wrote the majority of the New Testament, was the life interrupted, and that's what you need. That's what's happened to many of you, actually. That's why you're here. God interrupted you. I thought it was this, and it turned out to be him. I love a little study, a little small group study we have in here called The Dust of the Rabbi. Oh, do that one if you get a chance. It's very sweet. It's about trying to keep your eyes on Jesus' coattails and his dust, the dust of the rabbi. What is it to follow Jesus in your situation? So, how is it that you're trying to baptize yourself right now? Well, I would say to you, you need to let God baptize you. That's what he said right there. He says, there's one coming that will baptize you with the Spirit. There will be a heart wound and a change in you. Your life will be dislodged and changed. Okay. That's preaching. That's preaching. Now, the final point. Where is he going? Well, he has a road that he's going. He's on a way. You know what the first Christians were called, the early Christians? You know what they were called? This is very interesting, actually. If you just kind of put all this together, sometimes it all kind of comes together and you go, wow. They were called the people of the way. Like a road. They were called the road people. Interesting. I love Bakersfield right now because there's a whole bunch of new ways being put in. Have you noticed that? You guys see the Mohawk Bridge? You see the trails? You see the other bridge that's going to go the other way for the Beltway that's going to come through, the three-way that you drive over there? That all our roads are 3 lanes now. Stockdale Highway's not so jammed up at 5, you can almost not get killed. I mean, do you see all the ways Bakersfield's being messed with? Do you see that there's a river that's just roaring through here? That's weird. That's like almost magic. How do we do that? God makes ways. He makes roads. And in those days, when the peasants heard that the king was coming, you know what they would do? They would go out to the little paths that they walked on, and they'd clear it. And they'd clear it. And they'd take the stickers out, and they'd clear it. You know what they were doing? They were making a way, a place, a road for the king to walk on. Did you know that? Those are the first highways, was people going out from the villages and just clearing stuff back so when the king came, the Caesar came, whoever was coming, had a nice place to walk. I find that very intriguing. Jesus is God's way to us, and Jesus is your way to God. God's way to us, your way to God. And this way that he did, this road that he cut, I think about when he was going into Jerusalem. They made a way. They did a king thing, didn't they? They took off their coats and they threw them down. It wasn't just a guy doing a mud puddle for a girl. I mean, it was their coats, and they were laying it down because they were insisting, this is the entrance into Jerusalem before his crucifixion. They were saying, he's a king. I don't know why he's on a donkey, but he's a king. There's something with him. So, what do kings get? Kings are about power and control, and Jesus seemed to move away from power and control all the time. He did not play people politics. He did not play any kind of manipulative game. He just simply spoke the truth to you. So Jesus got a throne. What was Jesus' throne? A cross. What did his crown look like? Thorns. I was down at the Getty Museum not long ago, and I saw a picture, and it's a wonderful picture of Jesus that we have. I'd like to show you. The artist, Rennie. And I like that. It's kind of troubled. Kind of wonderful. There's the king. There he is. That's how he rules. He's got his scepter, got a crown. He took what we deserved and gave you all the goods. That's the gospel. Jesus loved you when far from him, when living a lifestyle that was an embarrassment to God's standards. God loved you. God paid for you. Jesus lives. You and I can follow him. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your grace. And thank you that you are King. Thank you that this is your world in spite of all the information that appears otherwise. Thank you that you love us in spite of our feelings, which sometimes betray us. And thank you, Lord, that you can teach us to follow you as those men followed you nearly 2,000 years ago in a dusty place, that we can follow you in our homes, in our workplaces, in the oil patch, in the prisons, in the teaching school, in being at home with children, and being in a retired, and in all places. Jesus, you promised to let us follow you, so make it so for us. Help us. Open our eyes. It seems like you walked by people and they didn't see you. Give us sharp eyes this summer. Give us sharp eyes today. Let us let go of our wells. Let us come to your well. Help us to not take our thirst to the wrong things, who always rip us off. Don't let us take our hunger to junk food. Lord Jesus, guide us. Be with us. I thank you for your people. I thank you for the privilege of serving here. In Christ's name.